Most residential systems are evaluated only at specific moments: a service visit, a maintenance appointment, a visible malfunction. Between these moments, the system continues to operate without observation. Underground containment systems, by design, separate daily human activity from the processes that manage its byproducts. Waste enters, liquids exit, and biological and chemical reactions proceed continuously. Because these processes occur out of sight, they are rarely considered unless something interrupts normal use. The absence of surface-level indicators creates a perception of stability. Function is assumed to be constant because no signal suggests otherwise. Yet the system does not pause between scheduled interventions. Material continues to accumulate, microbial populations shift, environmental conditions change gradually, not in discrete events. Most interaction with these systems is indirect. Households typically rely on time-based actions, annual pumping, periodic inspections, or reactive service calls triggered by odor, backup, or drainage issues. In between, behavior often remains unchanged. Cleaning agents are used as usual. Water flow follows daily routines. No internal measurements are taken. These attempts are not necessarily incorrect. They reflect how most infrastructure is managed through episodic checks rather than continuous observation. However, they are based on a simplifying assumption that what matters happens primarily at the moment of service rather than continuously in between. The limitation is not effort, awareness, or intent. It is structural. These systems operate in closed or semi-closed environments where biological and chemical processes are cumulative. Small changes compound over time. The system's internal state can shift significantly without producing immediate external symptoms. Scheduled interventions, by definition, sample only a moment. They do not account for the conditions that develop between visits. As a result, by the time a visible issue appears, it often reflects a long sequence of unnoticed internal changes rather than a sudden failure. This gap between continuous operation and episodic attention is where most system stress develops. Not all systems rely solely on episodic intervention. In other domains, continuous support formats exist. Some infrastructure incorporates ongoing stabilization methods designed to operate quietly alongside daily use, rather than responding only when thresholds are crossed. These formats do not replace inspections or service visits. They function differently by interacting with the internal environment over time rather than addressing it at isolated moments. Their relevance lies not in performance claims, but in structural alignment. They acknowledge that the system never stops operating, even when no one is looking. Within this category, some households introduce passive treatments intended to exist inside the system between scheduled interventions. These are typically added periodically and are designed to dissolve or activate over time, interacting with internal conditions rather than external symptoms. They are not repairs. They do not replace pumping or inspection. They represent a different format of engagement, one that exists during the long intervals when no service is scheduled and no issues are visible. Their role, structurally, is defined by timing rather than urgency. What happens underground between scheduled interventions is not dramatic. It is gradual, cumulative, and largely invisible. Systems continue to process, accumulate, and adjust regardless of human attention. The challenge is not neglect, but misalignment between how these systems operate and how they are typically managed. Understanding this gap does not require action, urgency, or change. It simply reframes the problem as continuous rather than episodic. And in systems that never pause, what occurs between moments of attention often matters as much as the moments themselves.